Okay, let's move to the second slide of execution, information sharing. Well, it's your responsibility to facilitate the gaps. You should strive to get one view of the project status. And, well, how do you do that? Well, I believe the answer is through some form of electronic collaboration tools. There's an inexpensive route of using wiki pages, wiki is just a simple web page that almost anyone can update using a simplified markup language. You can place project things or project artifacts or information out on a wiki page, such as the start and stop dates of the current iteration, the user story names, the team member pictures, their email IDs, their IM IDs, etc. And then combine that with taking digital pictures and putting those on a server or shipping them around to the various teams, and Excel. So combining wiki with digital pictures and Excel can create a really inexpensive way of doing project sharing for information. You can go I guess there's an open source route here. For example, Agile Track is an open source tool. There's also freeware tools like ScrumWorks from Danube Software. And there's more expensive solutions such as ScrumWorks Pro, electronic storyboards, and Rally software tools. So you have the full gamut, but basically the advice I would give you is to establish some form of electronic collaboration tools. Also, when you're doing your iteration planning and at the end doing your iteration review and the retrospective, do that with the entire team. Don't just select certain people. Big thing about Agile is everybody's involved, and therefore they feel a strong part of the ownership of the deliverable. So do it with the entire team. Definitely, if those meetings go into odd hours, share the pain. One time ask your team to come in at 7 a.m., your local team. The other time ask the remote team to work till 9 p.m. To cover those off. If you can do those all together at the same time, one right after the other, that's better, because then you don't have additional follow-on meetings that might disrupt the team and their timings. Release planning should be done once a quarter at least, and once again, it's a planning meeting, so the entire team face-to-face if possible for that. Okay, let's move on to the third slide of 5 for executing the project. Synchronization, well, definitely pay attention to this. As I mentioned, you should structure your organization working hours to where you have 1 hour, at least 1 hour of overlap, and dedicate that 1 hour to sub-team synchronization. Hold a daily stand-up and video conference this, and alternate speaking across sub-teams. Sometimes when you do this, though, it goes much longer than 15 minutes, so you may do a sit-down, but when someone is speaking, they should stand up to help people focus on exactly what they're saying. So alternate speaking across sub-teams. So John in the local team would stand up and speak, and then Paul in the remote team would stand up and speak, and then it continues like that. And again, the remote team is on video conference and vice versa, so you can see both teams there. It emphasizes the one-team approach, and it also allows the total team to hear the impediments, because you might be surprised. There may be an impediment at the local team that the remote team, a person on the remote team, can answer and help provide some support for that. Scrum Masters at each location, primarily they'll work impediments raised by their sub-team, but definitely if they can facilitate, or they can synchronize with Scrum Masters and facilitators at other locations to work impediments also. Fourth slide out of 5 on executing the project, communication. Well, it's your responsibility to facilitate the gaps of communication. The communication modes definitely change when a team is distributed. Well, we don't always have face-to-face communication, so you have to encourage the very next best thing. telephone calls and teleconferences for short subjects and Q&A, video conferences for design discussions, planning, and any longer conversations. If you can avoid speakerphones, do that, because if you're speaking with an offshore team, speakerphones often have it takes like a 3-second cut-in time, and it can get very frustrating. So definitely invest in wireless headsets so that the developers can use those as they do their shared desktop sessions using WebEx or Microsoft NetMeeting, remote desktop, or Adobe Connect. And watch the body language. Remember that in communication, 80% of communication is body language and 20% is verbal. So it's very important to establish all of this infrastructure. Record the important context-setting presentations, such as project vision, key design ideas. A designer produces a key design idea or high-level design. Have them record that and put it on the server that the remote team can access. So as new members come into the team, they can review those to help set their context. Use group email IDs for communication, and IM is certainly a wonderful tool. It has a presence indicator, and especially during that 1 hour of overlap, have your team dedicated to that and be IMing and working out any questions with the other teams. Final slide on executing the project. Well, none of this really matters unless you do a disciplined approach to development. And by that, I don't mean command and control. I mean focused on agile and collaborative and consensus-based. For example, your design should be consensus-based. And the way you do that across the oceanic divide is do a virtual whiteboard session. There's a wonderful tool called Visio. It has a brainstorming mode, and you can WebEx that across, and basically it feels like a virtual whiteboard. There's an open source product called DimDim, D-I-M-D-I-M, which has another virtual whiteboard. There's others, but the basic intent is to get the wisdom of the crowd into your design. And once you do that, then you should document that briefly and place it on the project wiki. As far as estimating user stories, you should do that as a team because you'll get better estimates. But when you assign work items to the local team and to the remote team, those should be done along user story lines. For example, the local team might choose user stories A, B, and C. The remote team might choose user stories D, E, and F. If needed, technical discussions or clarifications should happen immediately after the combined daily sync as a carryover. And then you should ask your team members update the iteration backlog or sprint backlog immediately after the daily stand-up or the follow-on technical discussion.